all of it. You're right. We don't have this job without this great audience. That's all
for
true.
Sure. That is true.
All right. One thing I got to add. This is your second year anniversary. When you get in your 23rd year, there's a little bit of this white stuff that's going to start sneaking in. I'm just warning you.
No. Grecian formula. That's where I'm going.
All right, Tucker. Thanks, and all the best as always. All right, welcome to Hannity. So much breaking tonight. The first members of that migrant caravan, they have arrived at our southern border. Now, some were actually seen scaling the fence between Tijuana, San Diego. We have the video. Thousands more just days away, marching by foot through Mexico, demanding passage into the U.S. Now, coming up, we'll bring you a full report from what is now becoming potentially a serious situation and show you how the left is just trying their best to play it down, ignore what could be a looming crisis. Now, we'll also cover another serious situation. That is these massive, deadly wildfires ravaging California as we speak tonight. By the way, our prayers with everyone out there impacted by this horrific fire. And we have more post-absurd election drama out of Florida and Georgia tonight. We will reveal how Democrats are trying to rewrite the rules, upend the will of the American people. And once again, the armchair constitutional scholars on mainstream networks, left-wing networks, guess what? Dead wrong again. The Department of Justice, they are standing behind President Trump's appointment of Matthew Whitaker as the new acting attorney general. We also have an update tonight. I knew it was coming, Mueller's witch hunt. And by the way, we have serious news. Michael Avenatti, he is the attorney for Stormy Daniels. He has been arrested on serious charges, and in minutes, I will take on two liberals on everything from the border wall, the Trump agenda, the caravan, you name it, we'll get to it. All right, sit tight. A lot of news. Time for our breaking news opening monologue. All right, we've been warning you now for weeks. Thousands upon thousands of undocumented migrants, they have been marching towards America, our southern border. Now, the vast majority of these people, I have been saying, I believe, are coming here in search of a better life, more opportunity, the land of opportunity and freedom. But here's the problem. These individuals, they have not been vetted, no background checks, no criminal history checks, no proof of employment, no family ties to the U.S., no comprehension in some cases of what the laws of America are, no case for asylum. Many have no paperwork whatsoever, but they're demanding entry into the United States. And tonight, the first migrants have now reached our southern border, a group of around 80 migrants that split off from the much larger group. They claimed widespread harassment, mistreatment at the hands of their fellow migrants, and they were able to fast-track their journey north in vans to the United States. And according to the AP tonight, while another group of several hundred migrants will arrive in the next few days. Now, some have tried to scale a U.S. border fence. Look at these videos right near Tijuana. Others crawled through openings in that fence, forced to crawl back because U.S. Border Patrol agents responded and they were about to enforce the law. That is not a good first impression. This is just a small part of how many people are actually coming and a clear warning of a looming crisis. And according to reports from Mexican officials, as many as 10,000 migrants are just days away. Now, the Department of Homeland Security is warning, and they have put out statements that over 270 suspected criminals, gang members, drug traffickers have been blending in with what is a mostly male caravan. We've also learned that some illegal immigrants previously deported from the U.S., they're also attached to the group. Now, 7,000 active duty U.S. soldiers, they have been deployed to help secure the southern border. Now, they have been laying razor wire and constructing other barriers to prevent illegal immigration, protecting our sovereignty, our rule of law. We are a constitutional republic. It's important to remember, weeks ago, we witnessed the breaking down of that fence, as you can see, in southern Mexico on their border, crashing the gates into that country. This is a serious situation, an important reminder about why strong borders, the rule of law, and yes, the wall are so important. Now, if the president's plan had been implemented so far for a massive border wall, that had been completed with a big door in it, as he has said, the situation would be mitigated. It would be controlled. As a matter of fact, it would not even be a possibility of some type of confrontation at our border. God forbid. America needs immigrants. But We have to vet everyone coming into this country. We have to do everything in our power to prevent criminals, other bad people, even if they're mixing in with good people, from entering this country. And this is the very reason even Democrats just a few short years ago supported the enforcement of our border laws and our border. Remember this.
I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in. And I do think you have to control your borders.
People who enter the United States without our permission are illegal aliens, and illegal aliens should not be treated the same as people who entered the U.S. legally. The American people will never accept immigration reform unless they truly believe that their government is committed to ending future illegal immigration.
Those who enter our country legally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law. And because we live in an age where terrorists are challenging our borders, we cannot allow people to pour into the U.S. undetected, undocumented, and unchecked.
Oh, of course, now they're singing a much different tune. They sounded like Donald Trump. The party has moved so far radical left that virtually no Democrat supports border enforcement. And now with the caravan marching north, the left is doing anything and everything to play this situation down. It could get serious. Imagine for a second, thousands of people, not just 80, at the border. What happens then? Take a look.
When we're sending 15,000 troops to the border for a political stunt, that's a warning sign.
There is no doubt that what the president was considering great strategy to bring out his base, with, this stupid caravan conspiracy theory, which he hasn't talked about since Election Day.
We see what he's doing with our troops at the border, essentially using them as props.
It seems that we've gotten the all clear, the emergency is over, and the solution to the caravan invasion all along, it wasn't the troops, it wasn't walls, it was apparently just getting past the midterm elections.
We should be putting up barbed wire. Don't you want to be ready?
Some people did.
Oh my gosh.
Some people.
Now, unlike CNN, MSNBC, their cohorts in the Democratic Party, we are going to continue to track what is a very serious situation. And meanwhile, we're also following some horrific news out of California. Wildfires ripping through areas in both northern and southern California. Now, the statewide death toll is now up to 51. Thousands of buildings, homes, other structures destroyed, billions of dollars in damages, and an entire town was even burned to the ground. The devastation is shocking. Tonight, many are looking for answers, making a serious case. Could this fire have been prevented? Now, according to the Wall Street Journal editorial board tonight, federal, state environmental protections have left California's drought-impacted forests vulnerable to these fires. Now, there's nearly 130 million trees that are dead, that have died in the past 7 years alone. The government has been preventing them from being cleared. For example, quote, the Endangered Species Act, the National Environmental Policy Act have hampered tree clearing, controlled burns, timber sales on federal land. And the article goes on, quote, California also restricts timber harvesting and requires myriad permits and environmental impact statements to prune overgrown forests. And in California, quote, to burn leaves, tree limbs, landowners must obtain air quality permits. Now, these permits are extremely restrictive, can be difficult to produce, controlled maintenance in California's forests. We now, when we get these forests, we cannot put people's lives in jeopardy. These fires cause far worse environmental damage than a controlled burn or timber excavation. And human lives are irreplaceable here. It shouldn't take people in California now in these areas have their lives at risk. And by the way, our prayers are with all of them, all impacted by this horrific crisis. Look at that. It is out of control, and we will continue to track this story. But first, we do turn to Florida. the election catastrophe that is ongoing. Tonight, the statewide recount continues with tomorrow's deadline looming. Both Republicans, Ron DeSantis, Rick Scott, they do look poised for victory. And tonight, there are still so many questions surrounding the sketchy actions of Broward County and its supervisor of elections, Brenda Snipes. Now, she somehow managed to magically find, oh, I found it, 75,000 purportedly uncounted ballots days and days after election night. By the way, all in violation of state law and the state constitution. And Snipes continued to report these ballots in the week following the election. And for days, she wouldn't tell anybody, where these ballots were coming from. Now, tonight, we still have no idea what happened. And President Trump, he is calling for her to be fired. But as the recount rolls on, Snipes, did have time to go on CNN and defend herself. Take a look.
You have been cited, Ms. Snipes, as a problem in this process, that you're not doing the job with transparency and you're not doing it with the efficiency that gives confidence in the overall process. How do you respond?
Well, those are opinions that people have put forward for their own various reasons. But I'd like to call to your attention that this midterm election, in addition to running very smoothly, was one of the most highly participated midterm elections probably that we've had in 20 years or more. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to make an election possible, to make it efficient, and to make it something that voters want to participate in. And obviously, we're doing that.
All right, now, given her poor track record, as we have detailed every night on this program with deadlines, maybe she needs to be doing her job, counting the votes instead of going on interviews. Now, tonight, Florida is not the only state facing some insane election drama. In the state of Georgia tonight, Democrats are refusing to concede that governor's race, and that's between Stacey Abrams and Republican Brian Kemp, despite no path to victory for Abrams. And by the way, they're not stopping there. Far left, Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown, he is ramping up election conspiracy theories, accusing Republicans of outright stealing the election. Kind of rich, considering all we've seen in Florida. Take a look.
If Stacey Abrams doesn't win in Georgia, they stole it. It's clear. It's clear. And I say that publicly. It's clear. They can't win elections because there's way more of us than there are them. They can't win elections fairly. They win elections by redistricting and reapportionment and voter suppression in all the ways they try to scare people, particularly people of color, how they make it hard for people in college campuses, especially community college where there are more low-income people and more people of color.
It's beyond sad, despicable, sadly predictable, and sometimes with some people, stirring racial tensions, fueling baseless accusations. And remember, redistricting, that would have zero impact or effect on a statewide race. But of course, this is nothing new from this crop of radical Democrats. There seem to be no moderates left in the party. They're all literally cheering for Robert Mueller. Please find something, anything. We can't do it on our own. And tonight we do have new developments from that witch hunt. Fox News has learned that President Trump and his legal team are now on the verge of making a decision about whether to submit written answers to the special counsel. That development follows the latest stunt from Senator Jeff Snowflake, who again today exposed himself, not as a conservative. Now, Majority Leader McConnell flatly rejected Flake's bill, quote, protecting Mueller to the floor. The president has said recently he has no plans to do anything with Mueller. And Flake is threatening the president, all his Republican colleagues, saying he will oppose all of the president's judicial nominees until he gets his way and the Senate votes on that legislation that supposedly protects Mueller from being fired by the president, which isn't happening. Blocking conservative judges, breaking a promise to the people you represent in Arizona. Senator Flake, tonight, he should be ashamed. And also breaking today, the armchair constitutional scholars on left-wing, mainstream, so-called media networks and in the Democratic Party, they were all wrong. The acting attorney general, as we told you on this program, Matt Whitaker, he did receive the full backing of the Department of Justice. The DOJ today releasing a 20-page memo explaining exactly the things we told you, that Whitaker is unquestionably authorized to lead the department. And they cited the very law we had cited, a 1998 law that called the Federal Vacancies Reform Act and the Appointments Clause of the U.S. Constitution, adding that there have been, quote, countless similar presidential orders dating back over 200 years. And finally tonight, we're going to end with one very important topic, and it's called due process, the presumption of innocence. I have been saying all during the Kavanaugh hearings, a foundational principle in a fair and just society. It has served this country so well. A pillar, our constitutional republic. And by the way, if you remember during Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings, we defended this principle from baseless attacks and irresponsible accusations by individuals, some on the left, some for political gain. And of course, we have that fame-seeking attorney, Michael Avenatti, who was one of those irresponsible actors. And he brought forth claims from a client who accused Kavanaugh of gang rape almost on a weekend basis and drugging young teenage girls and boys lining up in the halls and one by one, quote, waiting their turn to rape these young women. There was no evidence. That story eventually changed. Avenatti demanded that his client and all others, have made accusations that they should all be believed. You might remember this.
If the president was smart, if he wasn't so arrogant, he would see the writing on the wall and he would pull this nomination immediately.
If you make accusation or allegation the bar of whether or not you stay or go, Michael, what does that set up for the future?
I mean, that's a very good point, Chris, but I think we're beyond that from what I understand relating to the lie detector test being passed, which, of course, is not admissible in a court of law. We're not talking about a mere accusation or allegation. And here's another important point. This isn't going to be adjudicated in 1 day or even 2 days.
Now, we learned tonight that Michael Avenatti has been arrested. He was taken into custody by the LAPD. He has been charged with serious charge, and that would be felony domestic violence. He is denying these allegations. He is proclaiming his innocence. And I will be consistent on the issues of due process and the presumption of innocence. But one can only wonder if now maybe Michael Avenatti would apply the same standard to himself that he applied to Justice Kavanaugh. Or maybe tonight he would prefer that the country give him due process and the presumption of innocence. Or will you lock yourself up and just throw away the key? I believe he deserves presumption of innocence, due process. Let the legal system do their job and hope and pray that the right justice and answer comes through. All right, joining us now with an update on Florida is the Attorney General of that state, Pam Bondi. Pam, thank you for coming back. Let's go to the criminal investigation of what is going on there. I have been told by numerous sources that varying pieces of evidence have now been handed over to various law enforcement agencies in the Broward that know things about what happened in Broward County and Palm Beach. Can you confirm that?
No. And Sean, it's a pending criminal investigation. FDLE has opened a hotline with us. Folks can call in if they have information. But right now, it is a pending criminal investigation. I laid out in my letter why we do believe there's plenty of reasonable suspicion for criminal activity, and that investigation will continue. On the flip side, we're working tirelessly right now constantly on the civil suits that are being filed, frankly, not by Bill Nelson, but by everybody who's using him as a pawn.
Explain, before we get to that, we do know laws were broken. And we do know, for example, law about 30 minutes after the polls close. You're supposed to report. You're supposed to report every 45 minutes. Other laws that we know have been broken. It seems like there certainly has been mishandling. I mean, if all of a sudden you find a box of ballots in a rental car in Tampa from Broward County, that seems pretty problematic to me. On the laws that we know were broken, or what the judge on Friday said was the Florida Constitution not being abided by, what happens in those cases?
Well, Sean, everything is being reviewed and looked at as it comes in. And again, citizens, if you have more to bring to us, bring it to us. Please call the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And that's why we're not waiting until this is over. We've started a criminal investigation now. I can't discuss any more about it because it is ongoing. And that's much different than the civil lawsuits that have been found. But it's very serious. We're taking it very seriously. Law enforcement's taking it very seriously because it's the integrity of our elections.
Putting aside the recount in 2000, you have 2004, we have problems, 2012, 2014, 2016, 17, and in August of last year, we had a judge's ruling about misconduct in a particular election. And my question is, how is it even possible, with all of those violations leading up to this, that the very same people were in place? I think the people of Florida and the country need to know this is not just a Florida issue. This impacts the whole country.
It sure does. It does. It's the integrity of our democracy, our election. This is a bedrock of which we're founded, our country. And that's why we're taking it so very important. But ethically, I cannot talk about a pending criminal investigation. You should be a prosecutor, though, because you've come up with some very good points that I think law enforcement, I'm certain, are taking into consideration.
All right, Pam Bondi, thanks. We will update this, obviously, until we get the results. Of course, another delay because the machine got heated in the recount in Palm Beach. The machines don't work. It's unbelievable. Pam Bondi, thank you. All right, when we come back, Senator Lindsey Graham says he would be ready now to reopen a Hillary Clinton email investigation. We'll talk about the recount with him. He will also be the next chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. We'll explain that later. Well, it kind of takes two on one. I'm going to debate two liberals about what is going on with the migrant caravan. We'll talk more about Hannity and the California wildfires. A lot more news straight ahead. All right, the recount continues tonight in Florida. But first, according to new reports, Senator Lindsey Graham may be, in fact, the next chair of the Judiciary Committee as Senator Grassley weighs his departure, increasing the chances of a full investigation into the FBI, their handling of the Clinton email probe. And joining us now with more reaction, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, good to see you. Before we get to that, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on the recount. And all of a sudden, 80,000 here, 15,000 here. They just keep showing up.
Well, if Rick Scott had not weighed in the way he did, and if President Trump had not spoken up, I think they would have stole this thing from us. 90-something thousand votes counted after the polls closed. We stopped the bleeding. He has a lead now that can't be overcome, in my view, by a recount. So I think Rick Scott's going to win this, and I think mathematically Nelson's eliminated. But thank God that President Trump and Rick Scott took this seriously.
Yeah. Senator, we have a lot of important judicial appointments. We had a threat by Jeff Flake tonight about protecting Mueller. And I know you said that's fine, but the president said he has no intention of firing Mueller. It looks like some agreement has been made by the reports I read between the president's lawyers and the special counsel, written answers. That would mean this is now coming to an end, at least in my mind.
Well, this is a manufactured problem. President Trump is not going to fire Mueller. Mueller is going to be allowed to do his job, and we need conservative judges on the bench, as many as we can, as often as we can get them. I don't know what Senator Grassley is going to do. He's been a great chairman of the committee. If I'm chairman next year, we're going to do judges, and more judges. And at the end of the day, I am convinced that Mr. Mueller will be allowed to do his job. I've seen not one scintilla evidence of collusion. The obstruction of justice thing never made any sense to me. You can fire somebody who works as a political appointment. The FBI director could be fired for almost any reason, and the Democrats wanted Comey fired. So I feel good about everything right now.
In many ways, I think you had a key moment in the Kavanaugh hearings when you spoke up. It was a powerful moment and an important one in terms of what was going on with Justice now Kavanaugh. And one of the people that made the most outrageous claims was Michael Hannity. He's facing serious charges tonight. But that story, we now know, it changed with the client that he was representing. It changed pretty dramatically in terms of what she said. He made these accusations, and as I've been playing, and I'm not saying this in any way. I believe in due process and the presumption of innocence, especially at serious charges. It's served this country so well, and to not be consistent would make me a hypocrite. I am consistent. But I wondered if you had thoughts about this tonight.
Well, number one, Ms. Swetnick's affidavit on its face just made no sense. Who would repeatedly go to parties where women are being drugged and raped and not say anything about it and keep putting yourself at risk? So the claim by Ms. Swetnick that was authored by Mr. Hannity actually helped us because it was so over the top. Now, he's being charged. Seems like a credible allegation, but he's entitled to the presumption of innocence. innocence, and I will give him that due. I'm not out to get Mr. Avenatti by turning the legal system upside down.
Whatever's fair, right, just, moral.
Exactly.
Let's stay with that. You said that you were ready, perhaps, to reopen the Hillary email investigation. Now, when we know the Democrats in the House, they've been talking about 100 different investigations. This is what is important to me. And people have said, well, why do you talk about Clinton? Because do we have a dual justice system or equal justice under the law, equal application of our laws? That would mean an exoneration before an investigation. In the case of Hillary Clinton, that would mean if we're going to talk about Russia and Russia influence, that has to go to the dossier, bought and paid for, funneled money through a law firm into a op research group, to a foreign national, debunk lies that the author wouldn't even himself stand by when pressed in an interrogatory in Great Britain. Then, of course, the leaking of such information to influence the 2016 elections, lies about Donald Trump paid for from Russia. And then, of course, being used to appoint a special counsel. Is all of that on the table for you?
You know, to my Democratic friends, if you want to look backward, we're all going to look backward. I want to know why the FBI reached to the conclusion, along with the Department of Justice, that Hillary Clinton didn't commit a crime. Was it because of political bias? If you really wanted to stop Trump, how in the world could you indict her? Was the reason she wasn't indicted is because they wanted to make sure that they stopped Trump? And how can you stop him if you indict her? Did the Department of Justice and the FBI use a document paid for by the Democratic Party, researched by a foreign agent, to get a warrant against an American citizen that was inappropriate, potentially unlawful? We need a special counsel to look at all this, but I intend to look at it. I'm going to look at it. If you're going to keep plowing everything up at 2016, count me in. If you want to look forward, I'll look forward. If you want to look back, we're going to all look back to everything and everybody, not just Trump.
Let me ask you this, and I forgot the fraud on the FISA court, because that was
the fraud on the
Grassley-Graham memo. The bulk of your quote, the bulk of information came from the phony, unverified, uncorroborated dossier that mostly has been debunked. You know, there was a proposal by the White House today about prison reform. I had the opportunity. We all saw the video of Alice Marie Johnson. And when one offense, it was serious, 22 years in jail, raced out to the arms of her family. It was beyond a touching moment, and said, "Thank you, America, for giving me a second chance. I'll not let you down," when the president pardoned her. And I look at prison reform. We've got 2 million people in jail. In a 5-year period, a 77% recidivism rate. I want to find every Alice Marie Johnson in America, and I'd love the president to pardon one such person, 10 people a day, if we can do that, because I think we do need real reform. There is unfairness in the system.
Yes. Wouldn't it be ironic if it was Donald Trump who fixed the problems created by the 3 strikes you're out rule passed by Bill Clinton? Wouldn't it be ironic it was Donald Trump and the Republican Congress working with Democrats that allowed just thousands of African American and Hispanic males a second chance for nonviolent offenses and create bed space for
punishment's not working.
People.
If you have a 77% recidivism rate, locking you up in a place with bad people, and you're not helping or advancing and changing hearts and minds, it makes sense to me. But Senator, we'll follow that more. I think there's a lot of potential there. Imagine the president transforming the power of the pardon for every Alice Marie Johnson who I met, and is an amazing woman. I think it would be great for the country.
Getting minorities out of jail, giving them a second chance, improving the economy for African American, Hispanic families is a very big deal.
Senator, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. When we come back, I'm not taking on one. No. Well, it's kind of always unfair when a conservative debates a liberal. I'm taking on 2. I'll explain next. We also have deep state news and an update on the Mueller investigation. Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, they have the latest. And Trace Gallagher here. He will give us an update on Michael Avenatti's arrest as Hannity continues. Stay with us. All right, so some of the migrant caravan have arrived at our southern border, and now we see thousands of others also coming. The AP reporting, quote, migrant caravan groups arrived by hundreds at U.S. border. Joining us now for a debate, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, President Obama, Austin Goolsbee, and civil rights attorney Darryl Parks. Austin, it's so good to see you. You know why? Because I just played at the beginning of the show, I hope you were watching, a guy by the name of Barack Obama, who you love. You absolutely adore, and who I think did a horrible job. Okay, we disagree. And he sounded like Donald Trump about protecting our borders, respecting our sovereignty. What has happened from then until now?
Only good things. You know, look, Sean, you and I have been friends a long time. Yeah. And I will say, among Democrats, among liberals, I'm totally in agreement that a country should control who comes into that country. So we should secure the border.
Well, all right, hang on. Now, mark this moment. That means your wonderful wife, who I have met and had dinner with, has finally had some influence on you. We're making progress.
Yes. Well, look, but here's what I'm saying. The caravan, I'm glad you're at least following up on this. The president was out trumpeting this as an invasion and the biggest threat to national security. The vast majority of the people in this caravan are still in the city of Guadalajara, which is 800, 900 miles away from the U.S. border. And
they're now
women
transportation,
escaping domestic violence in Guatemala. They're 4-year-old kids. This is not what we should be. If you're concerned about border security,
well, let me tell you why
let's
we
put
should
the
be
focus
concerned.
where it should be, not on these kids.
Darryl, let me concede. Putting aside, the 300 have been identified by both Mexican officials and Department of Homeland Security as to being bad elements that are trying to mix in with the caravan crowd of migrants. And as I watch them, and I would argue probably 99+% are good people, live in poverty, horrible lives, want what we all take for granted in this country. It's the 300 others that we have to worry about. Here's what I'm afraid of. Here's the video of what happened at the southern border in Mexico. And that is, they take the fence, they knock it down, they race across the border. For the safety and security of everybody, if this happens on our southern border, I don't want anybody hurt. All we're asking, if you want to come to this country, to do it legally. You're a lawyer. Do you respect the law?
Without question, we respect the law, Sean, and we expect that those people, once they get to the border, they're going to do the right thing. These people are, we shouldn't demonize them. They are trying to escape poverty. They're trying to escape political instability.
Did I demonize anybody?
I know you didn't, and I'm glad you did. You did. Tonight you're doing great, Sean. Thank you.
Oh,
but
tonight
I think
I'm
these
doing
people,
great.
they all
right. Just tonight, though.
You're doing great tonight. You do well all the time, but tonight you're doing great. Let me say this here. These people are looking for a better opportunity. They're looking for a better opportunity like all of us in America. I'm sure once they get there, they'll follow the rules.
We have laws.
I don't think we need to be as concerned.
We're a constitutional republic. We have borders, sovereignty, laws. And if you really want to be here, the first prerequisite has to be obey our laws, respect our laws. Don't just take it upon yourself. Go ahead.
I
but
agree
at this
with
point,
that,
we have
but,
no
the
indication
only
that they're going to break the rules.
Yeah, that's true. And remember, our law, if you're coming to apply for asylum, our law requires you to come to a port of entry to apply for asylum. Hundreds of these migrants are literally trying to make appointments to come in and apply for asylum. And we've sent 15,000 U.S. troops skipping their Thanksgiving with their families to go down there and do nothing. They're doing CrossFit or twiddling their thumbs.
You know, we saw what happened. We just played the tape. What happened at the southern Mexico border? We can't have that happen here. And I'll tell you why.
Sean,
the first people that need to be protected are the innocent people that want a better life. Let's protect them first.
Okay, I agree with that. We can all agree on that. Yeah. Now, 40% of the people that come to the U.S. illegally, 40% of the people that come to the U.S. illegally come to the airport, John. They come in and then they overstay their visas.
And we're trying to make improvements there as well. Darryl.
Well, without question, I hope and pray that these people will come, they will apply properly, and they'll get the opportunities that our country can provide them to. And be
I think you should give them pro bono legal work. I think you should do it for free, and Austin will help pay you because he's a really rich guy. He's, you know, after the devastation of the Obama economy.
When you finally pay me for my bet, Sean, I will be a rich guy.
I have overpaid you for your debt. Do you not remember the dinner I paid for?
Wait a minute. You did pay for that dinner. But that was on a technicality. But
a technicality.
You bet me $6,000 at Obamacare. You said Obamacare was going to cost 100 million people their insurance. So I'm still waiting for payment on that one.
Okay. The cost has gone up between 100, 200, 300%. So many counties have one option. Many millions lost their doctors, their plans, and everybody's paying more. Broken promises.
Yeah, but not 100 million, so you're going to be paying me more.
What do you say to the millions of Americans paying more, lost their doctor, lost their plans, and only have one option now? That's it.
I tell those people to say, thanks, President Trump.
You've lost your mind, but see, it takes two liberals, one conservative. That's the way it works. Anyway, thank you both. When we come back, we have some big breaking news. Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, surprising developments in the Mueller probe. Also, the latest on Michael Avenatti's arrest from earlier tonight. Does he tonight believe in due process? Has he changed his mind on the presumption of innocence? That's straight ahead. May be finally wrapping up tonight. The Trump administration, according to reports, may be turning in written responses to questions from the special counsel as early as this week. And today in the U.S. Senate, Mitch McConnell blocked legislation put forth by Senator, Jeff Snowflake that would, quote, protect Mueller from being fired, even though President Trump said he's not firing him. Here with reaction, the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Russia Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, frame Donald Trump, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter. Sarah, you just heard Lindsey Graham, and very clear that starting in the beginning, Hillary Clinton, exoneration before an investigation. Then, of course, the FISA abuse and the FISA court fraud that was committed, the bulk of information being the unverified dossier that not even Christopher Steele would stand by, and, of course, trying to influence the 2016 elections with bought and paid for Russian lies and using the false information, circular reporting to also influence the appointment of a special counsel. A lot there.
A lot there, Sean. And I think Senator Graham is right on the money. If we get Senator Graham and he takes the chairmanship of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I can guarantee you that he's going to move forward with this. The American people need this. They want this to wrap up. They want to know the truth. This is why not only does there need to be an investigation by the Senate Judiciary Committee, but we also need those documents declassified. And only the president can do this. The only way to get to the truth is to get transparency, to get those documents declassified. That's the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant on Carter Page. We also need the Gang of Eight binder.
Gang of Eight, 302s.
Yeah, and the 302s by Bruce Orr. This is what needs to be done now so that we can move forward.
You know, it's interesting because Donald Trump was able to defy the history of Bill Clinton, who lost 60 seats, 8 Senate seats in his first midterm. Obama, who lost, Greg, 6 seats in the Senate, but 63 House seats. And he fought to keep the Senate as hard as he did.
Right.
It's rather profound now because all the threats that the Democrats are making, all of this would move right over to the U.S. Senate, wouldn't it?
Right.
There's the
it
same
absolutely
jurisdiction
would. And
oversight.
And Lindsey Graham is the perfect person to conduct the investigation because he knows there's a plethora of evidence that there was an illicit scheme by the FBI and the Department of Justice to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. And he would reopen the Hillary Clinton email case. You know, it's a crime for an FBI director or official or
18
agent.
USC 793.
It is
I have it etched in my brain.
to hide incriminating evidence and to make a decision about a case, the Clinton case, for political reasons. So Lindsey Graham will investigate that.
Let me ask you this. If it's true, all the reports that there are going to be written answers only on Russia, not on any obstruction, because the president can fire anybody he wants. You know, Gerald Nadler saying, well, he wants to investigate, what the president said. It's meaningless if he said something, didn't do it. But is this the beginning of the end? If, in fact, there's not going to be a subpoena, written answers are going to be handed in. It sounds like the airplane is now heading in for a landing, Sarah.
It is. It is. Every source that I've spoken with tonight over the past week says Mueller's going to wrap up this investigation. We are not going to see anything happen to President Trump. What we might see is some indictments, maybe Roger Stone, Jerome Corsi, who's his assistant, Roger Stone's assistant, and very closely involved with him. One of the things that I did hear, Sean, that to me is so important, and there was never any evidence, never, from the very beginning of this investigation by the FBI, that there was any kind of collusion, which isn't a crime anyways, but there was never any evidence that the Trump campaign was working with the Russians. Yeah. Only on Hillary's side, absolutely.
We only have about 40 seconds. I want to give it to Greg. I believe in due process deeply, the presumption of innocence. You were on a lot with us during the Kavanaugh hearings. Michael Avenatti, serious charges tonight. I believe he deserves that also, and I'm sincere.
You should be commended for what you said about that, because everybody, including Michael Avenatti, deserves the presumption of innocence and due process. But isn't it ironic that Avenatti was the one who didn't want to afford due process and presumption of innocence to Brett Kavanaugh? I wonder how he feels tonight.